Welcome, everybody.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Senator Ben Brooks, representing the 10th District here in Baltimore County. And thank you all for joining us today for the meeting of the Joint Subcommittee on Program Open Space and Agricultural Land Preservation. I appreciate the commitment of my colleagues, agency partners, and stakeholders who continue to support Maryland's effort to protect open space and preserve our agricultural lands. As we close out this year, today's discussion allows us to review our progress, address emerging challenges, and ensure that the programs continue to serve our communities effectively and responsibly. Program Open Space and our agricultural preservation initiatives remain essential to safeguarding natural resources, strengthening the agricultural economy, and expanding equitable access to green space across the state. I look forward to a productive meeting and to working together as we prepare for upcoming legislative session. Thank you for your dedication. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague in the House, Delegate Robin Lewis.
Thank you, Senator, and welcome to all of our participants here for this December 2025 meeting of the Joint Committee on Program Open Space and Agricultural Land Preservation. The Senator really said it all. I'll simply add this. We're going to hear from agencies that are essential to effective implementation of Program Open Space for ensuring that Maryland stays at the forefront of agricultural land preservation nationwide. And we'll also be getting a couple of updates about projects that are important locally and statewide. So I look forward to a fruitful and collegial conversation as we warm up for the 2026 session. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Senator Brooks.
Okay, all right. We do have an agenda in front of us. Yes, we do. And then we can go ahead and start off with the Department of Natural Resources.
Good afternoon, members of the Joint Subcommittee, Chair Brooks and Chair Lewis. It's a pleasure to be here. For the record, Josh Kurtz, Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources. And we are going to kick us off today on the Joint Subcommittee and the Joint Committee, and we appreciate the opportunity to present on Program Open Space and some of the preservation projects, land preservation projects we've been working on. Next slide, please. So what we're going to go through is some agency updates, answer some of the questions that were put in the agenda. We're going to talk through the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Agreement and the impacts that that is going to have on land protection and conservation. We'll talk about some budget impacts, specifically federal budget related impacts, and then touch on two legislative priorities that we're going to be putting forward during a session that could have some impacts, not necessarily impacts on land protection, but could help assist with building more resilience for our communities and improving our ability to plant trees, which is something that we currently do as part of our protection and stewardship of our public lands. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll start with agency updates. Next slide, great. And the first is on Gwynn Falls Partnership Park. I want to thank Co-Chair Lewis for joining us on the field trip. And so the Partnership Park was created through legislation, and we've been working on this for about 2 years now with Baltimore City Rec and Parks and a stakeholder advisory commission that was created in statute. And what you see here is kind of the back half of this past year and what we've been doing to get that final report submitted to the legislature, which was submitted on December 4th. Before this, for the last year, we've been working on having regular meetings with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, and then having continued engagement with Baltimore City Rec and Parks. What's not captured on here is all the close work that we did with Rec and Parks. Our capital program team here at the department, our engineering and construction team went out, toured the facility with Rec and Parks, cataloged the infrastructure there. Our parks team went out, talked through the management strategies that are currently being utilized to get a sense for that, also to get a sense for what the opportunities and potential challenges could be if this were to move forward as a partnership park, and then to really look at and then our forestry team and our wildlife and heritage team got together to look at the opportunities for natural resource management. And just to orient everybody, Wind Falls Lincoln Park is one of the largest urban parks in the country. It has incredible opportunities for wildlife, for recreation, and there's already several fantastic partnerships there with nonprofit organizations as well. There's many areas for recreation there. When you look at the Leon Day Park, especially a big area for youth sports. So we really got to see all of it. This park has something for everybody, frankly, and really is a gem here in the state of Maryland. So we've been really excited to be working on this. I think some key takeaways for myself from the tour itself was really the scope, right? The scale and the scope of this park. You have very large areas of intact wilderness within the city that abut directly into communities and neighborhoods. It really is an area that has a tremendous, almost frankly, almost unimaginable untapped potential to grow in its resource offerings for the people. And yes, Delegate Healy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can wait till you're finished if you want to do that. That's fine.
I'm happy to take questions, but I defer to the chairs.
Sure. Now it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I mean, I think this is a wonderful opportunity and it's great. My question is about, because I don't know what kind of fee structure there is. With the city managing it now, does the public have to pay to participate, use it, come in and wander around and do whatever they want? And if the state were to take it over or develop this partnership, would there be fees charged or would it continue to be free? I don't even know if it is free. I'm just asking the question.
Yes. So currently it is free to use the park, to use the trails, to come in and experience the park. What we've looked at is really kind of creating a space within the park that DNR could start taking over some management opportunities. I think when we look at our management structure and the way we fund the park service, frankly, the park entrance fees is a critical piece of that. And so we did detail in the report the need for us to come to an agreement on a fee structure if we're to move forward with a management approach. In large part, those fees go to paying the park rangers that run those parks, being able to keep things clean, operable, and safe for our visitors. So that is discussed in the report as well. But yes, as you point out, not a current fee to use this park, but state parks, we do have a fee structure for our use so that we can continue that long-term operation and maintenance. I'm actually, if we can go to the next slide, there's some more details on what we discussed and what's in the report. And so one of the big things that we did was not just the stakeholder advisory committee process, but it was having a consistently running public survey that people could take online. We also held 2 focus groups, one in person, which we had a significant amount of turnout. It was 4 hours. We wanted to kind of span the workday to after work hours to make sure we got everybody who wanted to participate. So it was 3 to 7, and we had set this up into several stations. So if you were interested in public safety, you were interested in natural resource management, outdoor rec, a wide range of things, so we could have kind of small group discussion. We captured that. That is in the report. And then when we looked at the survey responses, you can see here the top 3 things that were identified by those roughly 400 responses: enhanced natural resource management and restoration, enhanced outdoor recreation amenities, and critical maintenance. I think one thing people did touch on frequently was a lack of access to bathrooms, which is not something that is a surprise for us anytime we talk about parks. That is one of the biggest drivers for those that attend our park or that do continue to come back to our park systems, is when they have clean, operable, and usable bathrooms. And so we took all of the feedback from the stakeholders, from the survey, and we built this report. And within the report, what we looked at is identifying a footprint for co-management for the Department of Natural Resources and Baltimore City Rec and Parks. Currently, that is an area that is just about 100 acres of the 1,200 acres, and we see this as an opportunity to kind of get up and running and then kind of understand what opportunities there are for growth. And so that's all detailed in the report. We do have a preliminary draft budget that looks at building out kind of some of the capital components that the park currently does not have. That includes a visitor center, and to that point about fees, an entrance gate area. And so that is all documented in the report, and we look forward to having discussions with you all and your colleagues on that moving forward. And I think just to really kind of ground everyone, and I think everyone knows this, but just to put a fine point on it, Baltimore City currently does not have a state park. The only other jurisdiction that does not have a state park is Wicomico, but we are in the process of finalizing an acquisition there that would create the first state park in Wicomico County. So a great opportunity here for a partnership between Department of Natural Resources and Baltimore City Rec and Parks in an area that is already very well loved and one that is very substantial in a city anywhere across the country. Next slide, please. And then we wanted to provide an update on HB 717 from last year, specifically the foundation. So we have been working through, with the bill going into effect October 1st, we've been working with the Attorney General's office to build the legal structure for what that foundation would look like. We're looking at a few different models, kind of weighing pros and cons, and then build out a full framework for the foundation, how it would operate, how it would interface with the department, how we would be able to align our budget and needs with fundraising opportunities by the foundation. And so we're currently working with the Office of the Attorney General on that. Our goal is to have that structure built and stood up by the end of this fiscal year, so by July 1. So that would be kind of the creation and launch of an entirely new entity. And we've looked at a couple of the programs we've looked at are looking at kind of the national park model, the National Park Foundation that supports the Park Service. We've also looked at how the university systems foundations work to support the university systems here in Maryland. So two of the primary examples that we're looking to build off of. I do think there are, some not significant, but we need to be very tight and very responsible in how we set this up to begin with. I think that's one thing we've heard repeatedly. I've talked to other states that have gone down this pathway as well as we were developing the legislation last year. So we're working diligently on that and are excited to have that up and running, especially in a tougher budget climate. Next slide, please. All right, I wanted to talk now about budget impacts. And so I wanted to highlight a couple sources that have been really important for us. The first one is the REPI program, or the Readiness and Environmental Protection and Integration Funds. This is through Department of Defense. And this program, we are able to get funds to do easements and land protection at large scale in Maryland. And this protects things that are critical to our national security and our Department of Defense. And so what you'll see is the protection of flight pathways, things like that. This has been a very important tool for us, especially in the Nanticoke watershed, the lower part of, or the southern part of Maryland, to be able to do long-term protection. We have not seen any impacts to that fund source as of yet. Especially, we have seen the federal government continue to really fund Department of Defense. So we've not seen any changes to that are concerning. And then the other critical one for the department in terms of protection and stewardship of our lands is the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is out of the Department of Interior. Again, we have not seen any significant changes or impacts to those funds, but I did want to highlight kind of in that next bullet down, a broader issue that we are seeing that could impact our fund sources. And it's when we certify the grants, right? And when we do a certification or we sign off, basically what we're saying is all of our, we are meeting the laws and regulations of the federal government. They're now wanting to make sure that we are meeting executive orders as well. And one of the ones that they're putting additional scrutiny on is whether we are continuing to do diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility work. I think that's probably not a surprise, we are. And so we've been working closely with our Attorney General to ensure that if we are receiving funds from either of these fund sources, it doesn't jeopardize our ability to continue to do that work and still allows us to tap into some of the federal funding streams. So as of now, we are still moving forward, but I think that second bullet is really important because that could potentially be a mechanism that the federal government could use to hold this up, our ability to access these funds. And this is something that I know all state agencies are grappling with. Yes, thanks. Next slide, please. So the Chesapeake Bay Agreement was updated and ratified on December 2nd of last year. We were very excited about this. With the governor as the chair, we were able to get an ambitious, implementable agreement kind of agreed on by all of the jurisdictions that are involved. So all of the Bay States, the District of Columbia, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Chesapeake Bay Commission, which is, as you all know, is your representative within the Bay program. The one of the things that we were really excited about was specifically charged by the executive committee or council, which is made up of all the governors, the mayor, the EPA administrator, with embedding and clarifying a commitment to conservation and land protection. And so in the original agreement, we started right around, the goal of the previous agreement was to get to about 9 million acres. We achieved that goal in the previous agreement, and this agreement basically looks at that just over 9 million, 9.3 as the baseline, and requires us in all states to protect an additional 2 million acres of land across the watershed by 2040, with some specific call outs to urban green space, riparian forests and wetlands, and agricultural lands. And I think one of the things that's a real strength for Maryland in the Bay Agreement is that these are our priorities already and are embedded in many of our statutory programs. You'll hear obviously a lot about the urban land or agricultural landscape from Secretary Addix, but our green space equity program directly aligns to that green space goal. And then the way that we look at scoring for our acquisitions directly aligns to those targeted areas of riparian forests and wetlands. So again, I think continuing the success we've seen and Maryland being the leader, achieving that 30% by 2040, or 2030, excuse me, already. I'm jumping into 2040 mindset because that's when the next big goals are. And then the next piece of this, which I think is important for this joint committee, is the 100 new public access sites. And the thing I think I'm most excited about is these aren't just quantity goals, these are quality goals too. Because we looked at how do we put a focus on accessibility? How do we put a focus on expanding access points that already exist but are not fully optimized? We were really trying to think within the constraints of budget. How do we grow people's access to our public lands and our waterways and do it in a way that is meaningful, especially for our differently abled communities? So I think we were really excited to see that broad support for not only increasing the number of public access sites, but really thinking qualitatively about how people access them. And next slide, please. And then I'll step into legislative priorities. We have two. The first one is modernizing Tremendous. Tremendous program is one of our tree planting programs. What we've seen with the passage of the Tree Solutions Now Act and the 5 million tree goal, one of the things that has allowed us to be most successful there is the fact that that funding goes to site preparation and long-term survivability of trees. We are looking to clarify and add those funding opportunities to Tremendous. What we're seeing there is that those additional dollars spent pre and post planting get much greater survivability and is a better way to manage our tree planting programs. So this takes what we've learned in 5 million trees and applies it to one of our other big tree planting initiatives. And then the second one is really focused on resilience and looking at some of our fund sources, especially our loan programmings, making sure that they're accessible to all communities and that there's not too large of a financial burden on those communities when they're going out to secure those loans. And it's also looking to ensure that we codify some programs that we've had as pilots at the Department of Natural Resources, like the Restoration Through Resilience program, which allows us to really prioritize those resilience outcomes within our restoration program. So those are the two pieces of legislation that we're going to be bringing forward this year and look forward to working with you all on and getting your feedback on. Next slide. And that is my last slide, and happy to take any questions you may have.
I have one, Mr. Secretary. On the Tree Solutions Now Act, and that's where we're planning at 5,000 trees. At what percent? Where are we right now with reaching that particular goal?
Yeah, so we just submitted that report. I believe we're over 1.5 million trees. I will triple check that for you, but I can get you the exact number since we just worked with MDE, who is the counter of the trees. DNR has planted roughly 75%, so I can tell you we've planted about 1.2 million trees. But I'll follow up with MDE and we can get you the number of total tree plantings across the state.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Secretary Kurtz, and thanks to your amazing team, hardworking team. I have a couple of questions for you, but first a comment. First, let me thank you, your team, your department, for your hard work, your commitment, and your faith in the Gwynns Falls Partnership initiative. We couldn't even begin to imagine having a real estate partnership park without your commitment. It really means a lot. I want to flag that the Gwynns Falls field trip that we took was one of the highlights of my entire year. And I would just propose that DNR should lead a park field trip every year for our education and you know, to just make this work more real to more people. It meant a lot to me. And I want to give a shout out to Baltimore City Rec and Parks as well for their commitment, their you know, unending faith and efforts to make the partnership idea work for our city and our region, because Gwynns Falls has the potential to be a regional destination and really to belong to all the people of Maryland. So thank you for that. My questions are as follows. What happens with the results of the report for the purposes of public education? You, in partnership with City Rec and Parks, prepared and with input from the community. Let me just flag, by the way, over 400 survey responses and 2 focus groups. That's an excellent outcome for public input. So with all of that together, the report is here. What happens next for the park?
Yeah, so next up, obviously, we want the legislature to take a look at that, but we're going to continue those conversations with Baltimore City Rec and Parks. When we look at any of our partnership parks, the foundation of that partnership is an MOU, is a formal agreement with the 2 entities. As I think about Gwynns Falls Leakin Park, I think kind of the most analogous, if you will, but kind of the inverse analogy is actually Tubman. So at Tubman, the state of Maryland is the owner of the land, but the federal government is our partner. And so we share office space and we do programming there jointly. We manage the part of the facility together, while the Department of Natural Resources then manage the larger entity. So I've been thinking a lot about, and I think in partnership with the city, kind of the inverse relationship here, where the city is still, you know, the owner and manager of the park itself, but we have an MOU that looks kind of like a lease, but allows us to operate within the city, has very clear for the public, clear and transparent understanding of roles and responsibilities, and what this is going to change in terms of people's opportunities within the park. And so I think that's thinking about kind of like how we can get to next steps and where we can get to. I think that's a really good analogy and a really good example for us to kind of keep front of mind moving forward.
Wonderful. And I think what also needs to happen once the legislature takes the findings and recommendations in hand, there may or may not be legislation that would lay the groundwork for next steps on establishment of the partnership. An MOU, yes, between DNR and City Rec and Parks, but there are budget implications as well, as Delegate Healy flagged, and some operational considerations, but those will be deliberated thoughtfully and transparently, and you know, through the legislative process, and then beyond through you know, operational partnerships. So thank you very much. My second question, and there's more to talk about, but in the interest of time, my second question is about your legislative priorities. You mentioned a goal to support inclusive community adaptation and resilience. Could you be a little more specific about that second legislative goal? Could you talk a little bit more about the programs and procedures that you want to streamline? What should we anticipate?
Yeah, so I think the biggest component to that, which we're looking to get statutory authority to do, is to create community liaisons. And so one of the things that we find when we're looking to engage in communities and help them build resilience and tackle some big problems is that kind of building that trust in communities can be difficult, right? If we don't have staff that work there or who live there and work there, it can be hard. And so what we've been doing is working through community organizations. We've been working through individuals, frankly, in a lot of situations, but we don't really have a way to reimburse them for things like travel, for childcare, for lost wages. And so this community liaison approach, which is something we've been working on developing at the Adaptation Resilience Working Group of the Maryland Commission on Climate Change in partnership with DBM and many other state agencies, is how we could create a program that would allow us to do that. And so we really see that as a meaningful way for us to better engage with community, especially community organizers, where they don't have to write a grant to get reimbursed, or they don't have to be an employee of the department to be reimbursed for things like travel. And so I think that's the thinking there, is trying to ensure that we're being inclusive in terms of how we compensate those that participate in any of our programs and projects.
Okay, really interesting. I look forward to seeing that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. Senator, that's my last question.
Okay. All righty. Now we can move on down to our next presenter, and that would be the Department of Agriculture and Secretary Addix. You've got the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair Brooks and Chair Lewis and members of the committee and those who've joined us. Very much appreciate the opportunity to discuss a few very important things. Before we jump into, I guess we can go to the first slide, but before I go into that first slide, there are a few phrases that I've heard here, which I think, if I can speak for all of my peers, it frames all of the work that we do. Resiliency is one, conservation is another, and preservation is another. We're very focused on the resiliency of our food system and of farming writ large. And there are things that we're doing every day to try to strengthen our food system, and working across government through the Food System Resiliency Council to ensure that we're making progress, because we have to make progress. The second is conservation, and it's not just for the Bay, although the slide a few slides ago related to the Chesapeake Bay Agreement, so critically important. And I'm excited to say that Maryland is at the front of the pack when it comes to states working on mitigation strategies, and for us specifically related to our farms and runoff from farms. And we're leveling up, as we spoke about on the last meeting, with our Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming, or LEAF program. So we'll be excited to share some progress as we get through session and launch that program. And then finally, preservation. Preservation is key, not just for keeping land out of development, but for preserving it for future farmers. We in this state have many interested parties entering the farm space, but they are short on land. And that is because we are a very high pressure state when it comes to development. And so preservation is a way of taking those properties, moving them offline so that they can remain farming, whether it is going up for sale or ends up being leased to new farmers. So appreciate your support on all of that. The first topic today is urban farming in Maryland. As you know, farming does not just take place in rural areas. The idea of urban farming is not a new one, but we are leaning into it because we see that not only is urban farming about growing food, but it is a critically important tool in engagement and literacy, making sure that the general public and certainly the youth in the city, many of the farms that are in our cities and more urban and ex-urban areas have components related to education. And so really critically important going forward that everybody is literate, that farming is where food comes from. So we did a tour. We took a great tour. Chair Lewis, you were on this tour. Let's do it again. Let's do it frequently. But there was an opportunity to see a teaching farm, a controlled environment operation that's producing gourmet mushrooms, and they're about to expand. And we visited a commercial kitchen available to urban farmers and community members to prepare value-added products and to be a basis for catering operations as well. Secondly, we held a round table, as we do on all of our tours, because community input is very important to us. We use that feedback to build into our consciousness as an agency that is working on regulations, supporting statutes, and building new programs. So we want to make sure that we are taking in feedback at every turn. The primary topics brought up at that roundtable were, first of all, expanding farmers market opportunities, creating new markets for sure, but also expanding existing markets so that we have opportunities for new entrants to market their wares on a weekly basis. We're promoting more year-round markets as well, because if we have trained consumers to buy local during the season, we're also producing things year-round, and certainly, as with many urban operations, you have greenhouse and you have controlled environment ag. Those products can be grown and be made available year-round. Farm to school opportunities is something that we certainly heard the need for in Baltimore City. We do have some great examples around the state where we have counties that have truly leaned in to purchasing local food. Caroline County is an example that came up numerous times on that tour as the model, because in Caroline County, not only are they committed to buying local, but they've created a culinary program to teach the youth in the schools how to make use of these products. And so the kids are making and then serving products that are served at lunch from local commodities. So that's great. Regulatory issues and challenges came up. We continue to be a high regulation state when it comes to growing and producing. There have been some major advancements in that respect. The governor has set up a permit review council that is ongoing as we speak, and there are a number of priority projects at any given time, and one of those will always be a rural or a food-based project. And so it is a way for the state to learn live in action where the barriers are, where the hiccups are, and we will use that and have been using that to reduce our regulatory hurdles. And finally, land access and tenure. Land access has been a real issue, especially in urban areas where we very often have parks that may be underutilized. We have vacant lots that could very easily be reused, and there have been organizations and/or a number of entrepreneurs that have made good on their efforts and have begun to partner with the city in the park spaces and partner with either landowners, or if there are foreclosure opportunities, to take advantage of gaining access to those properties. A couple of really nice farms. And then finally, MDAs continue to provide technical and financial assistance to urban farmers. We learn a lot as we go through site visits. We also work with the University of Maryland Extension, who has a number of staffers, extension agents focused specifically on urban projects. We have an urban agriculture, water, and power infrastructure grant that issued 14 grants, total of roughly $310,000 in 2025. Next slide, please. Next topic is federal actions impact. From our perspective and hearing from farmers, we know that there were a number of programs that existed under the prior administration that were scrubbed in the early days of the current administration. Two of those programs were wildly popular because they were not subsidies. What they were mandates, ties, when food banks and schools received money to purchase food. It was tied to being required to purchase local food. And so what that did was it drove an incredible market pressure to buy local products. And we saw a number of new farms, brand new farms, have and find a market because of these government-funded programs. Think of it as a way of training the market, seeding new pathways and training the market to be purchasing local. It forces schools and it forced food banks to find those local sources, build those relationships, which, while they continue, unfortunately, the pressure is off with those programs being canceled. One of those was the LFPA, Local Food Purchasing Agreement program, $4.85 million, and that was to local food banks to buy local. There have been cuts in the ag mediation program. We have a FY26 deficiency of $44,000, and you can see FY27 a deficiency of nearly $60,000. And that's been a very valuable program. that we are faced with either finding a way to cover or letting it subside. Next, there have been no direct federal impacts to MDA from the government shutdown, but a lot of secondary, tertiary impacts to our industry and some of the programs that we support. One is the next one is the Big Beautiful Bill, cut SNAP. So it actually took money away, and so there have been less dollars, fewer dollars spent at grocery stores, farm stands, and farmers markets. Grocery stores may or may not be able to take that hit. A farmer who relies on SNAP beneficiaries as a core part of their customer base, as I see at my local farmers market, that really was painful for farmers. And just like the LFPA program going away, when SNAP money is cut, yet we've trained SNAP recipients that they can get the most viable, nutritious food at farmers markets, and then their dollars are cut. That's a problem. And then finally, Maryland farmers were definitely impacted by tariffs. The most important impact, or critical impact, or unfortunate impact, is the unpredictability. The fact that tariffs are on, and then there are counter tariffs from these countries, and these are places that used to purchase a whole lot of products, and then all of a sudden purchase no products. And so soybeans and China were directly related as a huge market before the tariffs, and that market bottomed out during the tariffs. There are some new relationships building as well, but we always have to keep in mind that we are not the only producers of food worldwide. And so when the prices go up, new buyers enter the market. So the uncertainty, the unpredictability, and the reciprocal tariffs have been very difficult on exported goods. And I should also say on some imported goods. Most of our fertilizer, for better or worse, is imported. And so when fertilizer is needed for certain crops, and fertilizer costs more, or some of the other inputs in farming, or some of the parts for equipment, et cetera, then it gets more difficult to farm. Next slide, please. And finally, legislative priorities. The first is a departmental bill, and we have but one departmental bill this year, and that is to sustain the Maryland Horse Industry Board. It is set to sunset in 2026. The bill extends it for 10 years, and it is part of a larger omnibus bill. I will say that I believe the chairs and committee members here know the importance of the horse industry in the state, but I will double click on it. It is billions of dollars of revenue to the state. We think about Preakness. We think that Preakness and thus Pimlico are the thing, but we have more horses residing in Maryland than in any other state in the union. And those horses need land, which prompts preservation. Those horses need food, which prompts farmers to grow it. Very often something needs to be done with the manure. And so there is a compost side of the business. Think of all of the medical care and care and maintenance for that horse, and tack and other supplies that riders might need. And then all of the activities and interests and races and events and shows that go into it. Racing has got a lot of attention lately. The governor just signed a bill that tasks the Department of Agriculture with working with its colleagues and with stakeholders to develop a horse industry strategic plan, because we know that if we can turn the dial just a little bit on this horse industry and we can get more breeding in the state, then we can have more Maryland horses running in races. If we can increase boarding in the state, then more people would be willing to invest in horses. And also we're going to need more land preserved for it. So it is supporting to agriculture. It's a huge economic driver. And we're looking forward to by next summer and early fall issuing this strategic plan. So please look for that. MDA's ask is related to Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation, which is a mouthful, so it's mouth. No further diversions of mouth funds would be our request. In 2025 session, $100 million reduction to the state's land preservation programs, MALF, program open space, and rural legacy. That's a hit. That cut continues for 4 years. We understand why it's necessary. We appreciate that it's necessary. I will say that it has the potential to negatively impact our legislatively mandated preservation goal of 40% of our acreage being preserved by 4040. So that is the one consideration we are requesting. We have been so excited that we continue to see incredibly strong interest in this program. And Michelle Cable is available if you have any questions about MALF. She is our executive director of the program. But I'm sure the same is with our sister agencies' preservation programs. The demand has never been higher, and part of that is because the development pressure has never been higher. If you just think about preservation in the market of what to do with your land, you could also put solar on it for a whole bunch of money per acre per year. You could, develop it old-fashioned residential, or there's a whole lot of commercial development pressure as well. So we still see MALF and land preservation as necessary and extremely desirable. So we urge your support on that. I believe that is my last slide. So thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for that. Delegate Healy?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. This is very helpful and very enlightening, and I'm glad that you're doing all of these things. I have a couple questions, suggestions. On the urban farming, I don't know, you may already be doing this, but since it was my original bill, I want to make sure that the local governments are aware that they can give property tax credits for urban farming. And it doesn't have to be public land. It doesn't have to, it can be private property. You can build something for profit on it and not have to pay taxes, to the extent that the local government will give a property tax break on what they're doing, because it takes, obviously, the city is doing a really great job, but I want to make sure that every little hamlet, every little town and county, large and small, knows that this is something that they can do to encourage in their urban areas, for all the reasons you've talked about, the educational benefits and the food benefits, and teaching people where food comes from, and teaching them how they can grow their own in their own backyard, if they have a backyard, and if not, in a community garden, all those things. So I just want to make sure that if you, as the Department of Agriculture, will continue to remind the local governments that they have an option that can help. And it takes, this is land that's a lot of times is just sitting unused, and it's not benefiting anybody. And it's not really, they don't get much for it anyway, because it's usually vacant or dilapidated. And it's an opportunity to make things good for the whole community. So that's my first question. That's not even a question, that's a suggestion. The second thing I wanted to ask about, and this is a serious question about importing fertilizer. I mean, we have heard so much about how we're trying to have the all the chicken litter shipped out of state and turned into fertilizer, and we're importing it from foreign countries now, when we're producing so much at the local level. How is that? I mean, is there any effort to try to keep some of that that's produced locally to be used locally if needed?
Well, a good question and a great suggestion on your first point. We'll definitely make sure that we're making our city and county partners aware of that tax credit. We've been approached by a number about it, and we'll just make sure that we've briefed everybody on it. In terms of the fertilizer, so top priority is let's find ways to use less fertilizer. So that's number one. And the good news is that the healthier the soil becomes through our Healthy Soil Grant, through cover crops, whatever it might be, the healthier that soil, the more nutritious it is for plants and the less, quote unquote, nutrition or fertilizer we need to add. So our priority really is on let's try to use less fertilizer. That said, while chicken manure and other animal manure is good, one way to say it, and I'm sure I'll be dinged in the ledger in another column on this, but we don't have nearly enough of it to supply the industry and the industry's fertilizer needs. And so a lot of the fertilizer, frankly, that's coming in through the Port of Baltimore, and we are a major port for the import of fertilizer, goes to the region, goes from here out toward the Mississippi. So we are a primary port for that fertilizer coming in. So while we use some of it, just generally the farming community during the tariff debates, and frankly, during the port closure, we were dangerously close as an industry, the eastern part of the country, of running out of fertilizer because of the port closure, because we have the systems and the logistics here to accommodate it, and not every port does. So, but that's a good point. We hear from farmers who, while they love poultry litter as a natural fertilizer, they can't get enough of it. There's just not enough to cover their acreage. And so I don't know that means grow more chickens. I just think that means we have to find other ways. But your point about, growing it, making it domestically is obvious. So we'll work on that. But reduction in our mind is key. That plays into the Bay program. That plays into soil health as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, in reference to grants, can you outline, either articulate the requirements and application process for urban farmers seeking to qualify for a state agricultural grant, and then what support is available to help small or emerging urban farmers navigate those requirements?
So I'll answer the second question, and the first question I would tee that up for Assistant Secretary Hans Schmidt if he is in the conference room down the hall. The second question is we've got an urban agriculture coordinator on staff, and so he becomes the direct connection with farmers. There is an urban agriculture committee that we host as well, which is comprised of I believe 8 or 10 urban farmers. And so we make sure that we socialize our programs through that group and through press releases and through groups like Future Harvest and Farm Bureau and on social media. But we do have a staffer on site whose primary goal is supporting urban farmers. And then I mentioned the extension agents. There are 2 extension agents in particular that come to mind that are interfacing and doing a little more of the hands-on work than we are. We still play the role of regulators, so we're not always in there hand-holding and helping the businesses through their grant writing, et cetera, et cetera. But we do see that from extension, and so that's why that partnership is so critical. Hans, any particulars on qualifications for the grant?
Primarily is that, an interested applicant would be contacting through the department. I believe it's those grants are for 10 acres or less. And so that applicant will be meeting with our urban ag coordinator. The coordinator will be going, similar to what the secretary just mentioned, will be going out, meeting with those applicants, identifying which programs might fit for whatever their objectives are. We don't want to make it too cumbersome and so forth. We want to make it as fluid and as smooth as we can for the applicant, because many of these applicants we have never worked, or they have never worked with us in the past. So we want to make sure it's as smooth for them as possible.
Right. And I saw you guys stated that the grant amount was slightly under 310,000 out of 14. That's a little over, what, 22,000 per, averages out 22,000. So each
Right.
Applicant gets does the amount of the grant fluctuates based on the project, I guess?
Yes, it does. It depends on what the project is. And the reference to the grant for the power and water is, the so the applicant can hook up to the municipality's electric or water. So it depends on the site, how close, the utilities is close as how close those utilities are to the property. So the price or the application or the cost can vary quite substantially.
I see. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Okay. My co-chair, go right ahead.
Thanks, Senator. Thank you so much, Secretary Addix, for your presentation. And I just like to make very clear that I'm already signed up for the next urban farm tour whenever you and your amazing
That's
team
great.
organizes one for us. Thank you so much for that October tour. It was incredibly educational. I'd like to go back to your remarks about the impact of federal policies on SNAP, on the local food purchase agreement program, on tariffs. It's really clear that federal decisions being made at the federal level are directly hitting the pocketbooks of Maryland families, and everyone is spending more on food. Just a quick search, I found that the average in 2024, the average American household spent about 10% of its income on food. I'm sure it's more than that now. It might be difficult to get accurate, reliable data from the federal level about that, but that's still a lot of money for the average household. I think the average Baltimore City, the median income is $57,000 per household, and 10% of that as an out-of-pocket after-tax expenditure. That's not nothing. And then you couple that with cuts to SNAP. A lot of households, a lot of families, a lot of Marylanders are struggling to afford healthy food. That brings me to ask, to what extent, and this is something you and I talked about, to what extent do we have the capacity in Maryland to feed ourselves with expanding and supporting urban farms, local farms, with supporting our local farmers and trying to grow the number of farms? What's the likelihood, the feasibility of food sustainability in our state?
Isn't that the question?
It's okay to be brutal.
Yeah. No, well, I mean that is the question that we consider every day, which is one of the reasons why we've leaned into the Food System Resiliency Council, because we realize it's not just us that gets to determine it. It's groups and organizations and nonprofits and our sister agencies and as we've discussed, communities that may have vacant lots but don't know what to do with them, or parks that just have to be mowed because it's got a lot of green open space. It gets complicated very, very quickly. Can we grow enough food to sustain ourselves? I think the answer is maybe, but I'll hedge and say yes, but there's a giant asterisk on the yes. Obviously, it's not avocados. It's probably not oranges, at least not yet. But where do we process it all? And so I don't know that locally just Maryland is going to make sense as part of that equation. I think as long as right now, most of our meat in the state, or much of our meat in the state, is processed. The animals are driven out of state to be processed, and then that meat brought back to be sold. Okay, so then we need to invest in our food system infrastructure. So if we invest in more meat processing facilities or cold storage or whatever it might be, bricks and mortar and trucks and logistics, that gets us there. That's one of the reasons why the Food System Resiliency Council is an important platform, because it's higher than just us, which we're in the grow food and make some value-added products business. But when you zoom out and see, well, you've got food systems school systems, and you've got universities and you've got hospitals that are buying food locally, but only a little bit. We may not be able to supply all of the carrots that they all need at the same time, or all of the lettuce. And so that's, one of the reasons why our broader food system grew and developed the way that it did, so that we, who are very interested in having butterleaf lettuce year round, or dinosaur kale, or a certain type of beets that you can only get in this shop, someone somewhere in the country that has the right conditions is growing that all the time. And so when you insert, and I'm going on, you can stop me, but when you consider urban agriculture, but then not just urban, but controlled environment agriculture, where you're reusing buildings that may not have a whole lot of other use, but it's going to take a lot of money to tear them down or renovate them, you can grow food in there. Mushrooms, for example, don't mind an old building, and they don't take a lot of electricity. And as we saw, they just need some humidity and a little bit of light here or there. And one clean room to process them, and you're good to go. So what are the crops that we can best grow in cities, in controlled environment areas? But as to your question about can we sustain ourselves, there are a good number of Marylanders that sign up as part of a CSA with a local farm, and every week they get a box of food, every week, year round. And that's what they're trying to survive off of. It takes some compromises.
Mhm.
And so we need to work on those compromises so that we can have that food year round.
Thank you very much for the thoughtful answer. And there's much more we could discuss, but I appreciate the thoughtfulness. And I just want to say, like, going back to Delegate Healy's question about providing our own fertilizer, can we grow our own food? Can we maintain the soil health of all of our farms without depending as much on fertilizer? These are questions I know you guys consider, and I appreciate you and your team as partners to solve those challenges. We've got to do something because everybody's got to eat. And yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
All righty, thank you. All righty, now, are there any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and move forward to the Maryland Department of Planning. And our presenter, Mr. Jason Dubois.
Yes, thank you. Thank
Go
you,
right
Senator
ahead.
Brooks,
Okay.
Delegate Lewis. Thanks for having us today. I'm also here with Andrew Wilson, our Government Affairs Specialist, who will talk about the legislative priorities today.
Okay.
We're happy to be here, Maryland Department of Planning. First thing we'll talk about is the update on state and federal budget impacts. But before I do that, I just want to briefly talk, that we're supporting, as you know, sustainable growth in Maryland as much as possible, and land preservation. We coordinate closely with the Department of Natural Resources and the Maryland Department of Agriculture, as well as other state agencies, to make that happen, such as through the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet and a variety of other types of cabinets. Secretary Flores is not here today. She's, as chair, coordinating the Permit Review Coordination Council that was established by executive order. And as we continue to try to make sustainable growth happen in Maryland, we note that through our own department's projections, we are expecting another 1 million people coming into Maryland, growing from about 6 million people to around 7 million people over the next 30 years through 2055. So everybody needs to go somewhere, live somewhere. Everybody needs to eat something. And so we're all trying to balance all those challenges together. So we appreciate the opportunity. So next slide, please. So luckily, we have not experienced as a department any sustained budget impacts from the federal actions, or at least that first government shutdown. We have some budget impacts from the state level, including this $5.5 million cut to our historic revitalization tax credit program. As you know, through Maryland Historic Trust, which is a part of our department, that is another very important way to help support our existing growth areas and our existing communities. And that's towards that type of redevelopment and revitalization helps to create amenities and support our growth areas to help to reduce pressure for development in our more rural areas. So you can see that the commercial program, as a competitive grant, has been cut about $5.5 million from 20 million to 16.5 million. It's just generally going to reduce the number of commercial projects that our department can assist over the next 3 fiscal years. So that's unchanged from our last meeting, and we're just re-emphasizing that. And like a lot of departments, we have a frozen pin right now in our division that I'm in, and that was partly dedicated to overseeing staff reviews of local land preservation and recreation plans, which will be coming in later next year to our department and the Department of Natural Resources. We know that we can't rehire that pin, at least for this fiscal year. So that's my summary of our budget impacts. So I'll hand it over to Andrew Wilson now. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got one more thing. We are working to hire a separate pin, different than the one that's frozen, that is focused on not only regional planning, but also implementing a number of our statutory responsibilities focused on land preservation. So now I'll hand it over to Andrew. Thank you. Next slide.
Thanks, Jason. Wanted to take the time to thank Chairs Lewis and Brooks, and I'd be remiss not to thank my fellow Andrew in DLS, Andrew Gray, as well as fellow staff for helping set up these meetings. Really do a great job in coordinating all those efforts. So for legislative side of things, the question was, what are MDP's 2026 legislative priorities? Top of which is 3 departmentals that were forwarding for the year, 2 of which chiefly concern comprehensive planning within the state. Some of you may recall last year we forwarded an update to Maryland's growth policy, otherwise known as the planning principles, formerly the planning visions. Those are a subset of principles that local planning boards have to abide by when they're updating or amending their comprehensive plans. The other side of that coin are comprehensive planning elements. Currently, it's a different set. There's some overlap between the elements and the principles. But with this bill, we're trying to do much better alignment. So especially those jurisdictions that have lesser planning resources aren't overly burdened in meeting both requirements. And we develop the planning principles with a holistic view in mind of these are the 8 most important aspects to hit when you are either amending or adopting a brand new comprehensive plan within the state of Maryland. As a part of that bill, which will amend quite a few portions of code within the land use article, we're also eliminating a disparity between charter home rule counties and then non-charter counties and municipalities with the amount of comprehensive planning elements they have to satisfy. Presently, charter counties and home rule counties have to satisfy a much shorter list of comprehensive planning elements than their non-charter county and local jurisdiction counterparts. It's the opinion of the Maryland Department of Planning that the longer list of municipalities and non-charter are very important to hit also, and that those charter counties should do as well. And we've worked both for this bill and the bill I'm about to talk about here in a moment. We've worked with local jurisdictions, our counterparts, our stakeholder groups in MACO, to kind of prep this ahead of the 2026 session. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback from them so far. And we're happy to see where this bill is going to go once session begins. For the right here, you'll see just a couple of snapshots from our regional roundtable series from this year. One of the key components of the Department of Planning is technical assistance to local jurisdictions for all matters planning, not just comprehensive planning specifically, land use and otherwise. But our kind of marquee communication with them each year are these regional roundtables where we go to 6 designated areas of the state of Maryland, covering all walks of life from rural to urban. We come to these meetings with some ideas of our own legislatively, but we also let the locals drive the conversation of ideas that they would like to see planning come forth with. And both of these proposals came out of those conversations and there's deliberations. And so the second one is a new requirement for localities to contact the Maryland Department of Planning when they begin their already mandated 10-year comprehensive planning review. Presently, the only time non-charter counties and municipalities have to contact the Department of Planning when they're updating or amending their comp plans is during the 60-day review process, or 60 days before their draft plan goes to vote, goes to a planning commission for vote. And charter counties aren't required at all to contact the Maryland Department of Planning. So what does that mean? When we departments and DNR ourselves, MDE and others are part of this, we open up what's known as a 60-day review for draft comprehensive plans. And then we recommend changes based on that draft, whether it be to make sure that that plan abides by state law or just general best practices that we want to see out of the plan. We've gotten a lot of feedback from locals that depending on the complexity of the comments, there might not be enough time for them to implement into the actual plan once it goes up for a vote. And so we brainstormed and discussed with the regions what's a way we can solve that. And something very simple that we can do is to move and require at the beginning of the process for those same jurisdictions to contact us when they begin that review so that we can connect them to guidance materials that are also a part of the bill that we're mandating, so that they know the state's laws are across the board, and so they know what some sustainable growth best practices are that we're forwarding as well. And so we're hoping, and the aim is with both of those, that'll make sounder plans, one, but also reduce the back end work for departments during the 6-day review window. So when there is comments, they're much shorter, hopefully simpler, and easier to implement ahead of that deadline for the local jurisdiction. Next slide, please. The other one is in relation to the Maryland Heritage Area Authority. They recently adopted a 7-year strategic plan, and we are introducing just more administrative changes to help meet the goals within that strategic plan. Those are in relation to membership, our board membership. So we're adding 2 official voting members and then replacing another from a now defunct Maryland Greenways Commission. And we're also giving more flexibility as to the matching percentage that the authority can implement when issuing grants. Currently, it's set up to where it's pretty much a 1-to-1 for most grants. We're trying to get more flexibility so that depending on the circumstance, the authority can give a 90% grant and only require a 10% match from a local project, just giving that variability and help with equity on that portion so that a wider array of projects can apply without having to meet what may be an overly burdensome 50% match for them. Next slide, please. And then the next question was just general topics of interest for MDP. What are we looking at just beyond our departmentals? We're keenly focused on all things land use. So as you all already know, this session will have plenty of deliberations on energy siting, housing production, economic development, and the sort. We'll be reviewing every bill that has those kinds of impacts for the state of Maryland, providing testimony documents, coming into Annapolis to testify on behalf of the department. And then we'll also be answering direct questions from legislators. We provide all technical assistance and expertise we can on land use related matters, and we hope to help drive those conversations as legislators have them, so no one, and stakeholder groups as well, so no one's left in the dark as we have these conversations. And we'll also be encouraging legislators and stakeholder groups alike to forward sustainable growth best practices as they amend and approve relevant proposals. When we were going through the deliberations of the update of the growth policy, the planning principles, as I mentioned earlier, a part of that is the development of a guidance document that we have recently finished and will be hard launching soon, so that local jurisdictions can look to that as they update their comprehensive plans and say, what are the best practices on the sustainable growth front for the state of Maryland? So a way in which legislators can help us and stakeholder groups can help MDP as we go throughout the session, referring back to that document and really honing in on best growth practices for all matters land use related, housing production related, and the like. As Jason mentioned earlier, we are going to have projected from the State Data Analysis Center, which is also within the Maryland Department of Planning, we're going to have 1 million more residents by 2055. We're going to have to grow to meet them. And to meet their needs. And so in doing so, we want to be able to walk and talk, walk and chew gum. We want to make sure we're forwarding sustainable growth best practices, making sure their needs are met without an overly detrimental impact to our environment, our resources, and the like. Next slide, please. And that's all from us today. I will also add Jason briefly mentioned the historic revitalization tax credit program as a part of our ask, I would hope, for the 2026 session. The past session already saw a $5.5 million cut to that program. 2 million came out of the small commercial side, and then 3.5 million came out of the competitive side that Jason mentioned. We hope to not see further cuts to that program. It's used for a wide array of redevelopment projects within the state of Maryland. One of which that I wanted to highlight was the Muller Pipe Organ Co. building in Washington County. That was recently awarded a $5 million tax credit from our program. We announced it within the last few days. And that money for an overall $22 million project will help turn a vacant building into 65 of housing units, 55 of which will be affordable housing units. And so it's those kind of programs. It might just seem like, oh, this is our $20 million program, our $22 million program. But it's really programs like that from a small agency like MDP all around that are helping meet the housing crisis that we're in. And we want to make sure those programs, if the funding is not fully restored to pre-2025 session levels, no further cuts are made so we can continue funding projects like this.
Right. Okay.
I'm happy to take any questions, both from me and Jason.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Do we have any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you. So many thanks to you, Jason and Andrew, for your presentations. And regards to Secretary Flora, it sounds like she's probably pretty busy with that with the permitting commission. I'd love to hear how that goes. I have a couple of questions for you both. You mentioned that, well, I have one question that either of you could answer. So I'm curious about how the planning principles legislation was received by the planning entities around the state. What did you hear during your roundtables? Because we had a lot of debate in the legislature about the planning principles, and I think we came out with something, good. How were they received in the jurisdictions?
Jason, I'll let you start, and then I can compliment after.
No, I think I'll defer to you on this one, Andrew.
Okay. So in preparation for the 2025 session, we had a 2024 regional roundtable, as we did in 25 and as we will in the years forward. We developed those 8 planning principles with those local jurisdictions in mind. And some of the more eye-opening conversations that we had, I can recall to the Lower Eastern Shore specifically is one of the regions that we went to. A lot of those jurisdictions rely on volunteer labor or labor from people who might not necessarily have planning backgrounds to meet comprehensive planning needs. And so when we were developing those 8 planning principles, we wanted to simplify the growth policy, which it's ultimately a part of, so that jurisdictions, both big and small alike, can have an easier time meeting them, and really hone in on those 8 elements, principles that we think are most important for comprehensive plans. And so both during the development of those principles and during the deliberations within the General Assembly with stakeholder groups, we have a lot of positive feedback. And we have jurisdictions that have already, the bill was effective October 1st. We had some jurisdictions that were already in their comprehensive plan review process when that deadline hit. We've already have some jurisdictions that have implemented the planning principles into their comprehensive plans and have given really solid feedback on it being an easier time in comparison to the 12 planning visions, and it really focusing on what matters for their community. A part of us developing the planning principles as well, and Delegate Lewis, I really want to commend you for the help that you gave us during session into helping develop and forwarding the bill as well. One of the pieces of feedback that we got as well is we were trying to make the planning vision statements shorter, more concise, so that's more openly interpreted for jurisdictions to implement in ways that fit their jurisdiction better. And we've gotten positive feedback to the like there as well, that they're successful in doing that.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll just mention, I don't know if it was my connection that was breaking up or yours, but oh, I don't even know. I think I might be frozen right now. I think it might be my connection. It's
We can
not.
hear you right now.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah,
I
we
just
can hear you
wanted
right
to
now.
thank you and say I'm pleased about the positive feedback. I also want to make sure that we get copies of the guidance documents, the
Yes.
what was it, the planning principles, final guidance documents.
Yeah,
Love to see
we
those.
plan to
And
hard launch by
also
the
just
end of
want
the
to
year.
acknowledge that I hear you when you say no more budget cuts. I hear you. And you guys do a lot. Okay, great. My signal is bad. Sorry about that. I just also wanted to acknowledge that I hear you when you say no more budget cuts. You guys do a lot with a little. And so message received.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Co-Chair.
Okay, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. All right, do we have any other questions? If not, just a comment, Andrew. I'm really pleased that you all going to be MDP is going to be keenly focused on land use, and especially siting, because of course, with solar siting, there has been some issues in the past, but we do understand the concerns by the counties and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, this hopefully, like this year, like the previous, the coming year is going to probably be challenging for all of us, but we'll get through. Yeah. So if there are no other questions, I can give my closing remark, and Madam Vice Chair, if you have a closing remark, you can, I can cede to you first. If not, I can just proceed.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I'll just say thank you to Department of Natural Resources, Department of Agriculture, Department of Planning, to the secretaries and all your wonderful, hardworking staff who do so much with a little, and appreciate the hard work you've done this year. And I see part of my role as supporting you to carry on your mission for the year to come. And with that, I'll wish everyone a happy holiday as well. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
All right, thank you. And I'd like to echo the thank yous from my co-chair. And I'll say this, this is the time of year that the whole world is sincere. And this is demonstrated by our kind deeds, our kind words, and our kindness. The Holy Father teaches us to seek symmetry. That is, we need to balance the external with the internal. And as doing such, as we aspire, let us inspire those who are behind us. As we congregate, let us appreciate those who are among us. And as we celebrate, let us commemorate those who have gone before us. Taking these practices and exercising them in the proper spirit will validate our acts of piety. So I wish each and every one of you a happy holiday season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Happy holidays to everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.